Hi, my name is Abigail Ringer and I'm part of the birth injury team at RWK Goodman. In this video, my colleague Kerstin, Scheel and I hope to cover what you need to know about MNSI and the early notification scheme. The Maternity and Newborn Safety Investigation reviews births where babies were born at or after 37 weeks into a pregnancy, following a labour, and where the baby has died or has a potentially severe brain injury. For example, the baby may have undergone cooling. In these circumstances, the hospital trust has an obligation to notify MNSI, and families will be contacted to gain their consent, and MNSI will prepare a report of their findings. The process used to be managed by the Healthcare Safety Investigation Branch, so if babies were born prior to October 23, then families may have been contacted by HSIB instead. Families may wish to seek advice and support from a specialist clinical negligence solicitor at any time in the process.
So if you meet the criteria for a referral to MNSI, the hospital trust will seek your permission to make that referral and for your consent for them to contact you directly. The investigators and team at MNSI will then be in touch, and they will need your consent to participate in their investigation. The first thing they will need your consent for is access to any relevant medical records and documents, and they will then access those documents directly from the NHS Trust, or you can provide them with relevant information yourself. In terms of the ongoing investigation, you can consent to the simple process of the MNSI undertaking interviews with NHS staff, but you do not need to participate in interviews with MNSI if you do not wish to. The MNSI staff will keep you informed of progress in relation to the preparation of their report, and you can ask any relevant questions when you wish. You will be invited by MNSI to participate in an interview with them. That might be you, your partner, or other family members who have relevant information. It is important to remember that you don't have to take part in those interviews, but it is often extremely helpful for your voice to be properly heard. Those interviews can take place over the phone, in person, or via video meetings, and the MNSI will work with you to find a method that best suits. It is important to note that your interviews with MNSI may be recorded, and you should ask whether or not they are going to be recorded and give your consent to that in advance. Medical staff will be invited to have in-depth interviews going over their version of events. It is important to note that staff interviews are not undertaken under the safe space principle. This means that they have a duty of candour to give all information relevant to the incident, but that information is technically not confidential and should be accessible to you after the investigation is completed. The MNSI will want a very full picture of the incident which occurred, and they will also want to get that information as quickly as they can so that it is fresh and as accurate as possible. That information will include medical records, hospital policies and documents. They may also ask for CCTV recordings, layouts of the hospital if that's relevant, and they'll go into the trust directly as quickly as possible to try and get that information. It may well be that you have got documents such as photographs or videos that you took yourself during your hospital admission that you want to provide the MNSI with, so please do feel free to produce to them any information that you think is relevant to their investigation.
The purpose of the MNSI reporting system is to improve safety in maternity care and facilitate learning within and between hospital trusts. A report will focus on the processes in healthcare. It will not seek to apportion liability or blame, and it will not apply the legal tests required to obtain compensation. Once a report is prepared, it will never be published. But once a year, MNSI will collate their findings, their themes and ideas in an annual report. It is important to recognise that the process forms part of a triage system for NHS resolution, the department who advise the NHS on resolving disputes under the early notification scheme. with the aim of determining whether negligence has caused harm.
The report will be a very comprehensive document and is often quite lengthy. It will normally set out an introduction to the incident, and the family will be invited to give a summary of both mother and child and give some information about yourselves. From April 2024, they have changed their procedure so that you can individualise your report with the mother and the child's name, but it is important to note that none of the clinical staff will be identified in the report. The report will set out a very clear chronology and go through the events and make comments throughout in terms of setting out relevant definitions and key terms of reference. The report will then go on to make both safety recommendations and safety prompts if they think those are relevant. It is important to note that those safety recommendations may not necessarily be linked to the outcome in your case, but if safety recommendations or safety prompts do come up, they will be included within the report whether or not they are directly relevant to your circumstances. The report will make primary conclusions and it will be forwarded to the NHS Trust for their consideration, and the clinical staff will have access to the report also. It is important to note that the report will not be published on the MNSI website.
Initially, MNSI reports will be produced in draft, and families will be given the opportunity to identify any inaccuracies before the report is finalised. Once an MNSI report is finalised, some families may be invited for a three-way conversation with both MNSI and the Trust. Ultimately, the report will be shared with NHS Resolution, the department who advise the NHS on resolving disputes. This falls under the Early Notification Scheme, with the aim of determining whether negligence has caused harm. The Early Notification Scheme only investigate a very small number of births. Not only are they restricted by the criteria that MNSI apply, but in addition, they tend to only investigate cases where babies have an MRI scan of their brain which shows clear damage from a shortage of oxygen. ENS will complete their own separate report, and in doing so, make a decision as to whether or not they're willing to admit liability. Once the report is finalised, it will be shared with the family. Reports provide a really useful overview, but they do not replace the robust investigative process of the standard legal route to obtaining compensation. The standard legal route relies heavily on independent medical expertise. Whilst ENS do instruct their own experts, the breadth of expertise sought is often not so wide. In my experience, reports can be falsely reassuring that the care received was adequate when this may not necessarily have been the case. For example, in the report prepared for little boy Amir, the panel found that the antenatal care his mum received was fine. But the independent obstetrician instructed as part of the legal process found that at the final antenatal appointment, there were lots of factors indicating that Amir was likely to be a really big baby and his mum should have been offered delivery by caesarean section. Similarly, in a report prepared for little girl Beth, whose delivery by caesarean section was complicated by her head becoming stuck in her mum's pelvis, the report was completely silent on the management of the delivery. The independent obstetrician, instructed as part of the legal process, found many failings in the management of the delivery. If you have received a report concerning the birth of your baby, please do get in touch with us. We'd be really happy to read through it and advise you on your options. It will be free of charge.
If you would like any further information on either the MNSI scheme or the ENS, please do feel free to contact us. We run a free advice and helpline, and full information can be found in the description below.